You've probably heard this story before, the one where the people of Israel get tricked by their enemies, the Gibeonites. Or at least, that's how it's usually told. But what if it's not about a simple con at all? What if it's actually one of the most brilliant legal strategies ever recorded? Yeah, the usual take is that Israel's leaders were just foolishly duped. But what if the evidence points to something way more sophisticated? Let's dive in and explore how the Gibeonites, a people facing total annihilation, managed to completely outsmart their conquerors. Okay, to really get their genius, you have to appreciate the sheer audacity of their plan. This wasn't some desperate last-minute gamble. No. This was a carefully crafted performance, and every single detail was crucial. So picture this. Israel has just had these stunning victories at Jericho and Ai. The surrounding kings do what you'd expect. They form a military alliance to go to war. But Gibeon? They saw a different path. Instead of fighting, they chose deception. Their plan was basically elaborate stagecraft. Every prop was meticulously chosen to sell one big idea, that they had traveled from a land so far away it would have taken weeks, maybe months to get there. The worn-out clothes, the moldy bread, the cracked wineskins, it was all compelling physical evidence for the story they were about to spin. But here's where it gets really smart. The genius is in what they didn't say. They talk about Israel's victories way back in Egypt, but they cunningly leave out the recent conquests of Jericho and Ai, the very events that scared them into action in the first place. It was a calculated omission, all designed to prove they were strangers, totally out of touch with the local news. So why all this fuss about being from a far country? Why was that detail the absolute cornerstone of their plan? Well, it's because the Gibeonites had discovered a critical loophole in Israel's own laws of war. And you have to understand, for Israel, this wasn't some fuzzy gray area. The law spelled out two very different sets of instructions for dealing with foreign cities. And the deciding factor was simple geography. And right here, you see their strategy in brilliant clarity. As a nearby Canaanite nation, their fate was sealed, total destruction. But by posing as a far-off nation, they triggered an entirely different protocol, one that actually allowed for a peace treaty and, crucially, their survival. This brings up the million-dollar question, right? How on earth did a small Canaanite tribe get such precise intel on Israel's internal laws? The answer wasn't a spy or a traitor. It was something far more surprising. It turns out the Gibeonites didn't have to seal this secret. This intelligence wasn't leaked by accident. It was practically broadcast for the whole world to see. See, years earlier, Moses had given Joshua these kind of strange instructions. After entering the land, he was to build an altar and write the entirety of the law on these huge plastered stones, making it very plainly visible for anyone and everyone to read. And the timing here is just everything. This public display of the law happens after the Battle of Ai, but just before the Gibeonites show up at their camp. Their deception wasn't just clever, it was a perfectly timed exploitation of brand new, publicly available information. And this ceremony wasn't held in some secret, remote location. Mount Ebal overlooks Shechem, which was a massive hub for ancient trade routes. Think of it like putting up a giant billboard in the middle of Grand Central Station. Merchants, travelers, scouts from all over, they would have all passed through and seen it. The text itself even says the law was read out loud before all of Israel and the strangers who were there. Tradition even holds that it was written in 70 languages, making sure every nation could understand. So the Gibeonites weren't super spies, they were just paying very close attention to information that was intentionally made public. So what happened when the lie was exposed just 3 days later? You might expect a total disaster, but this unlikely alliance actually turned out to be strategically vital for Israel. The other Canaanite kings were furious that Gibeon had switched sides, so they attacked them. Now, because Israel was bound by this sacred oath, Joshua was forced to go defend his new allies. And this single event triggered one of Israel's greatest military victories ever. Yep, the famous battle where the sun stood still. The oath, even though it was made under false pretenses, was still honored. And this alliance wasn't just some short-term military advantage. For centuries, the Gibeonites fully integrated into Israelite life. They served faithfully, one of King David's elite warriors was a Gibeonite, and they even helped rebuild Jerusalem's walls after the Babylonian exile. I mean, think about this. After the exile in Babylon, 95 descendants of the Gibeonites made that difficult journey back to help rebuild Jerusalem. That number is just incredible proof of their loyalty. Hundreds of years later, they weren't a thorn in the side. They were a committed, valued part of the nation. Okay, so let's circle all the way back to our original question. Was this treaty a foolish mistake, or was it something much more complex? You know, the common view that this was a huge blunder that cursed Israel, the text just doesn't support it. As the scholar Warren Wiersbe notes, there's just no evidence their descendants ever caused any problems. The story isn't about a curse, it's about survival, cunning, and some really unexpected mercy. The author of our source material draws a really fascinating parallel here. They see the Gibeonites as enemies who, facing certain judgment, find a legal pathway to mercy. By humbling themselves and becoming servants, they're saved. In that light, the story isn't a cautionary tale about being tricked, but maybe a model for finding grace. So the story of the Gibeonites really challenges our first impression. What looks like a simple trick might actually be a brilliant legal maneuver born of sheer desperation. It was a strategic surrender, a plea for mercy that wasn't just heard, but was honored for generations to come.